So as we all know, neuroendocrine cancer is a rare disease, and one of our biggest challenges is awareness, both as patients and for being diagnosed and the physicians that we may see. And that awareness, increasing that awareness, helps increase funding, and increased funding helps increase research. And that leads us to our next presenters. We're very happy to have NETRF as a sponsor of the conference this year and our partner. And Ron Hollander is with us, who's the Executive Director of the Neuroendocrine Tumor Research Foundation. Some of you may know this foundation. They've been doing great work for a long time as Caring for Carcinoid Foundation, which was started by a patient. And so please welcome Ron Hollander. Okay.
My name is Ron Hollander. I'm the Executive Director of what was then the Caring for Carcinoid Foundation. I believe you weren't quite yet the LACNETS leader, but what a great job she's done in the 5 years since then in building this community. So putting on the conference, but really, as I said, building a community and hearing as she asked the question before, how many of you are here on the journey recently, as well as for several years. How many of you came here, whether you were just recently diagnosed or not, with a lot of questions this morning? How many brought a lot of questions with you into the room? Yeah. How many of you have more questions now than when you started out this morning? Yeah, a lot for the live streamers. But fear not, because as I know Giovanna said, and I want to reiterate it, this is a journey. And those of you who've been with us at these conferences before know that it is a journey. And I speak to patients and families every day, and they call with questions, especially if they're newly diagnosed. What is this thing called carcinoid or neuroendocrine? Why doesn't my doctor know more about it? What is it that caused these tumors to form in the first place? Is it hereditary? Why aren't there better treatments? And why are there no cures? And that's why we're here as the NET Research Foundation in terms of answering that last question. But what I want you all to know about is that these conferences, and for those of you who are at home as well, what we want to do is empower you. We want to empower you with information, answer some of your questions, not all of your questions, but help you make the connections with other people, other patients who are on the journey, some of the wonderful speakers and organizations you're hearing about here and in the sponsorship tables. You are not alone, and I know a lot of people feel very alone when that news of a diagnosis comes in. We are here for you, we're here supporting you, and hopefully you'll take that away from this day, as well as some good information and a lot of resources that you can tap into to support you on that journey. In this next segment, Dr. Halpern and I are also going to give you some additional, I hope, excitement and hope. Yes, we're at a place where we're talking a lot about hope today, because what's happening in terms of research, especially over these last couple of years, is truly exciting and we believe transformative. So while we're on those journeys together and while people are managing this chronic disease, we're really about the business of not only controlling it, but conquering it once and for all. So we want to update you a little bit about our work, and I'm going to share a little bit of a video with you as well. So there we go. Okay, so the NET Research Foundation, as Giovanna said, was actually formed in 2005 by a patient that some of you know and remember, who was on a very typical journey at that time. Late diagnosed, symptoms for years, collapsed on the subway in Boston and was misdiagnosed even then with liver cancer and given very little time. When they finally found out it was a carcinoid tumor with metastases not only to her liver but other parts of her body, she started with some friends the Caring for Carcinoid Foundation to support patients who needed more information like she did, but most importantly to raise the money to find a cure. Our mission is centered on that. We are thrilled to be able to support education events like this, our website, and some of our work nationally and internationally. But this is really what we're here to do that's unique. We are your foundation, your nonprofit 501c3 foundation. And I know many of you, I've met many of you here today again, have been supporting us all these years too. And I can't tell you how grateful we are for that, because that's what fuels our progress. We have one focus only. It's in neuroendocrine tumors. And all of our funding comes privately. We have no government funding. The only industry support we get is for things like newsletters and education conferences. 100% of the research is funded by our donors, our family foundations, and charitable grants I'll talk about. We are guided by a board of directors who are all directly connected to this disease. Every one of them is either a patient or a family member of a patient, and I'm proud and pleased to be with two of our board members here today, Josh Mailman, who you've already met, and we'll meet again in a short while, and Todd Gilman, who many of you from the LA area know very, very well, who is also a wonderful member of our board of trustees. Everything that the Board of Trustees approves, and they're the ones who approve the research that gets funded, comes through a very deliberate and incredibly sophisticated board of scientific advisors. So we've got experts from all different fields that everything that we fund it goes through a scientific review that is really second to none, and yet we can also move much more quickly than, for instance, an NIH or whatever, so that when there's an opportunity that we see to learn more about what makes these tumors tick, or more importantly, to do something to control them, we can move much more quickly than that, and we'll talk more about that in a second. We seek and support, as you'll see in a moment, the top labs, not only here, but now increasingly around the globe. So whether it's cancer centers in Boston or California or Texas or you name it, we're looking for the best science, the best teams that can really help us make the most progress for you. And everyone that we do fund has a very high bar in terms of not only their scientific standards, but the accountability. We measure their progress every year. They come to an incredible meeting you're going to see a video about in a moment, where we bring all of the researchers together, because we believe excuse me, having researchers isolated in ivory towers, if you will, only reporting on results until they're published is too slow for progress. So we make people share data that hasn't been published, so we can make those connections between our research teams and make progress as quickly as possible, share that data, and quite frankly, in those meetings, build a community. You're going to hear from Dr. Halper in a little while. He's got some collaborations going today that he didn't have 3 or 4 months ago, because we just had a meeting and he met some other researchers that are working on similar questions. That's what's going to really speed us to cure. Many of you know that we had a transformative event by getting an amazing grant from this very area just about 2 years ago from the Margie and Robert E. Peterson Foundation. And time won't allow me to get into a lot of their connection to the disease, but let me just say that Mr. Peterson, Robert E. Peterson, who was, I think many of you know, a car enthusiast, a publisher of automobile magazines, in that wonderful museum. If you haven't been there, please go to the Peterson Museum in LA. It's been recently refurbished. It's a great afternoon, and please thank them for this incredible gift. $15 million over 3 years that is going to allow us to rapidly accelerate our progress of bringing the best labs and the best teams together, and quite frankly, to forge some of these new collaborations between and among teams that span continents for the first time in our little neck of the cancer community. So that is amazing. It's given us the ability to put together a strategy to really transform the landscape for cures. And it's really 4 key pieces. I won't get into a lot of detail about this, but fundamentally we need to crack the code of these tumors. You heard a lot from people today about observations we make, and there aren't a lot of mutations, and we try this, and then we try this in combination. We need to know what makes these tumors tick if we're ever going to control them, if we're ever going to cure them. You'll hear a lot more about that in a moment. So we pride ourselves in the really deep dive of the biology of these tumors so they can really unravel what makes them form in the first place, what makes them grow, what makes them grow slowly and then grow quickly, most importantly, how we can stop them in their tracks. And so when we do a trial, when we do a project, it's as important that we learn from that in terms of informing what the next step is to get us to cure. We're also really committed to building a community of researchers, bringing up young investigators, mid-career investigators, some of the experts from other fields of cancer. We want the best community devoted to finding a cure for our patients, and that's really a critical piece, and we're doing a lot of that through alliances with other organizations in this field and around the world. We also want to take advantage of things, whether it's immunotherapy, PRRT, and nuclear medicine, where there's so much happening now. In addition to taking that methodical approach to learning about the biology, we want to grab hold of something that's got real promise, like immunotherapy we'll talk about, and see if we can bring the best experts and the best thinking to applying that to NETs. And then, as I said, through education programs like this, through working with other organizations. I happen to be the president of the International Neuroendocrine Cancer Alliance. These are our Let's Talk About NETs cups. So for my colleagues who are live streaming, we're here. And you'll see a lot more of this on World Net Cancer Day on November 10th as well, when we try to raise awareness, but also talk about unmet needs this year of our patient communities. So the big piece of the Peterson grant was the creation of what we call our accelerator grants. These are the largest gifts we've ever made before. We're looking for teams, they're big grants over 4 years, to really be, as I said before, transformer, thinking about how these tumors form and grow, transformative in terms of the potential for changing the therapeutics, the treatments that are available, and ultimately our path to cures. And again, we're going to convene these teams that we put together to really cross-fertilize. We've just announced the first round of these. This is a $4 million of that $15 million gift. We're going through it quickly, so we have to sustain this progress. But these are the first 3 of our accelerator projects that were just named. And you're going to meet all of these people in a very short video in a minute, so I won't spend a lot of time. But the first one is a perfect collaboration between a California institution, a Massachusetts institution, and one in the UK. 3 researchers bringing tumor samples, state-of-the-art labs that they have in terms of really unraveling the genetic, the so-called epigenetic, and the biologic underpinnings of what makes these tumors tick. You'll hear a little bit about their excitement in a moment. A second team at the Mass General Hospital and the Harvard Medical School looking at intestinal nets. What is the first cell that changes from a normal cell to a cancer cell? They're really getting close to this now. And how can we use that transition to figure out whatever that process is, how we can stop it in its tracks? And then third, this is from the Netherlands, Hans Clevers, and you'll meet all of these people in a moment. He's really the first, you may have heard of something called organoids. This is creating organ-like structures from human cells, reformulating them in the lab so that we can test out and grow not only normal pancreas, for instance, but also pancreatic nets in many, many forms to be able to test new drugs, test new therapies safely without humans being at risk. So you're going to hear about all of those in a minute. We also funded a Peterson investigator, Laura Benazinski, a brand new investigator you'll hear about in a moment. She joins a class last year of additional early and mid-career scientists we brought to the cause from UCSF, from Johns Hopkins, from MD Anderson. Tom Hope, I think you all met at an earlier conference. who's doing some amazing and now clinical trial work in nuclear medicine. This is the next generation of people who are now dedicated to research in this area, finding the key to your tumors and the code to unlock for better treatments and cures. And finally, a very exciting project at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Institution, where we're looking at trying to create a liquid biopsy, a blood test essentially, without a biopsy that can tell us what they've observed, that our tumors change over time. Somebody said this earlier. As you're treated, things change in the tumors. Well, those changes, mutations, alterations in those tumors, can be the clues to what will work best going forward, will be the clues to why some people react well to some of the drugs and why some people don't. And most importantly, to be able to detect earlier, diagnose, and also give better prognosis as to what's going to work for each of our individual patients. So we're very excited about that. And we have another big project, as I think you heard during the nuclear medicine discussions, that antagonist, trying to make PRRT safer and more effective, that small 4 cohort group in Germany. Sloan Kettering recruited him to New York. We've got 20 patients in that trial. They've done their first round. Amazing response, but some serious side effects. So they're going back and revising that protocol, but it has real potential for what we believe will be a safer and more effective form of PRRT. So I'd like you to meet all of these folks. There's a picture of them on the top of the MIT Conference Center. Just about a month ago. We brought them all together with all of our other researchers, and I want you to hear about 3.5 minutes of their excitement about our work together. It's not an overstatement to say that the Peterson gift was really transformative. And maybe most fundamentally, it gave us the opportunity to really issue a request for proposals that went out not only to our scientists, but through many other affiliate organizations that we now partner with, and really have a global reach.
This is the kind of award and funding that will lead us to transformative changes in how we think about the disease.
First round of accelerator grants we've chosen to dedicate to understanding the genetic and the epigenetic mechanisms that underlie the disease.
The main aim of our grant, in a nutshell, is we are trying to discover genes and pathways that made the normal neuroendocrine cells that's hiding in the gastrointestinal tract to become a carcinoid tumor and provide druggable targets that we can manipulate and hopefully find a therapeutic agents or even cure for these tumors.
We want to be able to take small bits of the tumor of individual NET patients, expand them in the lab, create large biobanks, so in the end we hope to have hundreds of samples from hundreds of patients, capture the diversity of the disease. Every patient is unique, and we can, for instance, use these banks to find out what the best drug is for each individual patient.
So what we're doing now is try to figure out what are the causes of small intestinal neuroendocrine tumors using this multifocal sample set as the study set. Basically what we're trying to do is figure out, are there any genetic or potentially environmental causes, such as epigenetic and or infectious causes that are leading to the formation of these tumors in our patients.
What we could hope to provide would be possible novel diagnostics. So if we know new proteins that are involved in these processes, can we have new ways to identify these tumors and cancers and possibly new therapeutic targets.
So the potential of this project is to really validate a new diagnostic tool that we could use in the clinic setting that would be safer and non-invasive.
So the more multidisciplinary groups we have or international collaborations we have, the better the chance we have to actually get some answers to some of the major issues that exist in this area of research.
This is an investment in basic biology to understand exactly how these tumors tick.
We're hoping we're going to have a really solid foundation on which future accelerators can build in terms of more translational and especially clinical work that gets us closer to cure. So that's where we get our excitement. These are some of the top labs in the world now that are all marshaled together and with each other in trying to attack the problem of neuroendocrine tumors, and it's very, very exciting. This is all the new research. It builds on a solid base of research that's already been funded. You heard a little bit about the Sloan Kettering project before. We also launched a major multi-pronged initiative in immunotherapy just about 2.5 years ago. The world's expert in terms of CAR T-cell technology, the breakthrough technology in immunotherapy that was so effective for some of the childhood and adult leukemias, for instance. Carl June is part of a team at UPenn. We just got at the same meeting that Dr. Halpern and I were at a few weeks ago, an update on the lab work that's going into trying to figure out how to get those cells, your own immune cells, to recognize and attack neuroendocrine cells, and some very encouraging progress from the lab there. And then we have 3 projects, one of which you're going to hear a little bit about at the early part of Dr. Halpern's presentation. 3 different labs in the UK and Boston and now at MD Anderson, all delving into what is it about these tumors that somehow evades both detection and attack by our own immune systems. And it's very exciting, very important work if we're ever going to really harness the power of immunotherapy. Before I have Dr. Halpern come up, I just wanted to say something about collaboration. We can't do this alone. We can't do it without our amazing donors, people like yourselves and foundations like the Petersons, but we also have to make sure we're working with groups here and around the world who we can, bring our resources together and really multiply the effectiveness of our work together. I am the president of the International Neuroendocrine Cancer Alliance. We just brought the presidents of the North American Neuroendocrine Tumor Society, as well as the European and Commonwealth, that's the Pacific Rim organizations these are all the medical professionals and many of the researchers, all together in Barcelona. Josh joined me for those meetings, all talking about unmet needs in care and research, so we want to do that work together. And again, we're funding many of those researchers, the investigators we talked about, through those kinds of organizations, as well as the nuclear medicine group as well. There's one other thing I just want to leave you with, and then we'll have Dr. Halpern talk about his exciting work, which is something that every one of you can do to help us in terms of research. And no, I'm not going to ask you for money. Those of you who can support us, that's wonderful. But there's something else that's really, really important. You may have heard somebody talk earlier about the fact that we don't have good models of this disease. We can't grow it in petri dishes. One of the reasons we're doing that amazing project in Amsterdam to grow the organoids is we need samples of tumors that we can grow and test in some ways if we're ever going to be able to really safely test things like immunotherapy or other drugs. And so there's an organization, whoops, there they are, called Pattern.org. This was formed by the Rare Cancer Research Foundation, another nonprofit 501c3 that has really worked with us in other rare cancers to try to compile a registry and a source of tumors that can all be genomically and epigenetically tested and profiled, so we can learn from as many different patients, and so many of you are different from some of the other colleagues you have in this community, to really uncover some of these things that have really caused barriers to our progress. So if you go to Pattern.org, you can learn more about this. It takes about 10 minutes to learn about it. It's free. There's nothing to do. There's no industry involvement in this. This is all nonprofit. and it doesn't cost you a penny, it doesn't cost your care providers a penny, but if you are going through surgery, if you are having a biopsy, and you sign up for this, they take care of everything else to make sure that a piece of your sample winds up in this bank to be able to be profiled, and it might be that your tumor is the one that unlocks one of these secrets that allows us to really make transformative progress. So I would just encourage you to visit the site. It's pattern.org. It's a really friendly, easy process to go through. It would help so much to have many, many, many tumors of all the different forms, from the Fios and the Paras to the bronchials to all of the ones that we talked about that we know are here today to really help support our progress. With that, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your journey.